Hey guys, it's Carl from Scenic Junkies here. I want to do a video quickly on the pitfalls of this rooftop tent. I had a bit of time to use it on a 2-week trip from Brisbane to Melbourne. So let me get into it. So the good things about this tent, guys, I would say, personally, I think that setting up this tent is really easy, okay? So there was a lot of times in our trip that we got to a campsite really late and, you know, we had to set up the tent. And it literally was less than a 5-minute job to pop that tarp off and pop up the tent with the gas struts. Super simple, easy tent to use. This tent is very, very well made. The tarps used, the design overall, the materials are honestly one of the highest standards that I've come across in tents as well, especially rooftop tents. No issues with water coming in the tent at all, okay? We had some bucketing nights on this trip. And the only thing is there is condensation that builds up, but of course that always happens in tents when there is less airflow in there. And we did close up some of the windows because it was actually quite cold. We were camping in 10-degree weather and that sort of thing. So that is expected and not a fault of the tent. Another really good thing about this tent is actually these pockets here. They've just been so useful to store our shoes in there whilst we're in the tent. And a lot of tents don't really have these, so props to Dune for making them. They're really, really good. The first pitfall that I would say of this tent, guys, is setting it up on your roof rack. Now, it really depends on what roof rack you have, but you can see that I have a cheap roof rack. It's not a Rhino rack. It doesn't have the special bolts, okay, that make it super easy to put things on. This, guys, isn't even properly on. As you can see, I have a ratchet strap wrapped around the frame, and that's basically clamping it down on the roof, and that's not the proper way to install. I did get 4 brackets that came with this tent that slide, okay? They slide on channels underneath the tent. Now, guys, because of this roof rack, and many people will have a cheaper roof rack, because I believe the Rhino racks go for around $600 to $1,200, it's very, very hard to install those brackets because you need a really small hand to get under there and basically screw on the plastic bolt heads for the brackets. And for me, it was an impossible job. I couldn't do it. Hence why I used these ratchet straps, okay? So I would say setup wise, not so good. Another thing about the setup as well is you can see that I have a awning tent here, okay? And we didn't really use that too much because it was winter, but the brackets that come with a lot of the awnings, guys, are really too small, okay? They're really too small if you have this tent. So guys, as you can see with the framing of that tent, it is actually a little bit wider than the roof rack, okay? Now, if you have awnings on either side like I do, that's a bit problematic because the brackets are too small for the framing. Literally, guys, there is no space here. There's no space between the framing of the tent and this awning tent. And the same for all the other awnings around my car. I feel like the designers didn't keep in mind that there are going to be awnings, okay, on the roof racks. And it made the installing process really, really hard because I had to modify those brackets and buy bigger brackets. And even then, it's still very flush. There's not much room there. So again, that's another issue I found, one of the pitfalls of the rooftop tent. So guys, another pitfall of this tent, in my honest opinion, is how much space is in the tent. So me and my partner were the ones using it. My height is about 5'10", and she's about 5'5" or 5'4". And guys, there just wasn't that much space in the tent. Specifically when we were turning over at night, maybe we want to sleep on the side or sleep facing up. It was just really, really hard to turn over in there. And sometimes at night, your partner might move closer to you and that makes it even more uncomfortable. And I definitely found that other tents, specifically the King's Quickie, had a lot more space inside the tent. Now guys, this really did affect my sleep on the first few nights of using this tent. There just wasn't that much space in there, and that really affected my sleep. I was really tired driving in the car some days, so that's just another thing to keep in mind, and in my honest opinion, another pitfall. Now guys, I'm going to talk about another pitfall in my honest opinion, which was the strap that basically goes from the front of the tent and to the back to pull it down shut. That strap would actually grind on the top tarp. And I'm going to show a little video here, but as you can see, there was a few holes starting to appear. And basically that was because that strap was scraping the top tarp. And this was namely because obviously there was things in the tent, and that was making it harder to close the tent, but it was also causing more friction from that strap to the tarp there. So yeah guys, again, another annoying pitfall here, but you can see that if you're traveling in winter and you have things in the tent, the more likelihood that you might damage that top tarp that protects you from the rain. So just another thing to think about. Now guys, one of the other issues with the tent is actually, I found, was the storage. This is a little bit of a dilemma because I'm going to talk later on in the video about storage. With this tent guys, if you're traveling in winter and say you're bringing like 2 or 3 doonas, because I am in Victoria here, and most states really, they get bloody cold in winter. Now you need a lot of doonas to stay warm, and the only place to store them if you have a packed car really is your rooftop tent. Now that limits the amount of storage that's in this tent, because if you have something like a hard shell cover guys, you're able to store a lot more in the tent, and that was the case with the King's Quickie that we had before. So storage wise, it's really hard to store in that tent because of the design, and also if you're camping in winter, that's just one thing that you have to consider. You can actually still close the tent up, but it's going to be a lot harder because the tarp's going to be stretched out. There's going to be a lot more pressure on the clips on all the sides of the tent. And I found that just to be a little bit problematic and something to consider if you have this tent. Now, what are my final thoughts with this tent, guys? I do think it's a great tent. Don't get me wrong, it is a bloody good tent. I would say, guys, it really depends on what you're using the tent for. I also believe that this tent is superior in, say, smaller trips, such as 2 to 3 day trips, maybe, you know, to the high country, if you're in Victoria, or you say the Otways. It's good for those small trips, okay? But for long-term touring, I would say that it isn't such a good option. I believe that a hard shell tent or even a King's Quickie is going to be a better option due to the storage in the tent and also how many blankets you can keep in the tent. But this is more so good for those shorter trips and not so much in winter camping. Okay, so summer camping with all the airflow in the tent and the windows and all that kind of thing, I think it's a great tent for that. But for longer term trips, such as 2 weeks to 5 weeks, you know, traveling around Australia, doing those big trips to Cape York, I think that possibly this tent isn't the tent for you. So guys, if you've kind of enjoyed this video and you've had a good listen to me talk about it, let me know in the comments and about your view of this tent and what I've said about it. I'd really appreciate your thoughts. Do you think that this tent is good as a long-term tourer? If you disagree, put it in the comments. If you actually have the tent and you use it for both short and long-term trips or for winter camping, I'd love to know. Maybe you guys use some sort of feathered down sleeping bags to save storage up in there. I don't know, but just let me know in the comments. I'd really love to know. And this is Scenic Junkie signing out.